I think what you're saying is it's very complicated, which is very true. Education is complicated, and positive behavior supports are complicated. And in my mind, it doesn't matter if it's coming from an ABA field or if it's a separate field. It's like, we got these schools and these students, we got to educate them the best we can. And let's just put the puzzle pieces together, and see what we can do as far as building supports for students and teachers and families.
My man, that is so well said. You just moved up 10 more notches on my, right. I don't call it whatever. We just want to help people, right? So how did you get into this? And, at what level were you? Because, it looks like you've done quite a bit of research in this area.
Well, during my doctorate program, I worked with Rob Horner and the team there, Rob O'Neill and Bridget Flannery, Jeff Sprague, Rick Albin, that was really looking at, functions of behavior and developing positive behavior supports. And then George Sugai became part of the team, and he was looking at school-wide positive behavior supports, which really was an eye-opener for me. And actually, George did his first study at a school my wife was teaching at. So I kind of had that insight onto what was going on. And my wife and the other teachers there were very impressed with George and his ideas. And I think it really helped turn the school around and make it an even better school. It was a good one to start with, but it just became better and more focused on what supports are effective for students. And then I became a professor and started teaching classes on positive behavior supports. And I saw the need for advanced behavior class that focused on school-wide positive behavior supports, as well as mental health issues in schools.
Can you pause for a second there? What was the gap that George et al. Were just trying to fill back then? There's still a gap, but what was it that they said, what, this is going on, this is a problem, we need something else, let's do this?
There was two gaps, mainly. So the first gap was, what's the function of behavior? Because this was back in the mid-'80s, very long time ago, and most interventions were based upon topography. So if a student, engages in severe self-injurious behavior, you do this. If a student elopes out of the school, you do this, rather than why are they doing it? So what Rob and the team was great at focusing in on, what's the function? There's two functions. First one is to escape or avoid from something, and the second function is to get or obtain something. So once you understand the function of behavior, then it leads you down the path of what's an appropriate intervention for that student in that situation. If you don't know the function, you're just hit and miss. You may get lucky, what you do may work, but it's likely not to work. It's kind of a 50-50 shot at best. But once you know the function, it makes it so much easier to come up with an effective intervention that's positive and is focused on antecedent basis on teaching skills that serve the same function. So if the student engages in, self-injurious behavior to get attention, well, then you would teach that student how to get attention in a positive way so they don't have to engage in the self-injurious behavior. So that was kind of the first big thing. The second big thing that George and Rob really put together was, we got to look at this from a system standpoint, especially in schools. You talked earlier about OBM, you're interested in that. It's like, well, there are all these puzzle pieces to put together. The principal, the schools, teachers, the staff, the families, the students. We got to put it all together into a system that's positive and really looks at the whole school, not just a student or a classroom. So I think those are the two things that really came together and have really had a positive impact on schools. And also George and Rob are great researchers. So there's a lot of empirical evidence of, these strategies are very effective, and they've really outlined how you do it on an empirical basis. So we talked about evidence-based strategies. Positive behavior supports and school-wide positive behavior supports are definitely evidence-based practices.
Yeah, I love the work. In fact, I was inadvertently introduced to OBM through PBIS, and because I was the first school I went into that was like in crisis, and they asked me to turn it around. It was a mess, and the school had been trained in PBIS, and I'm like, well, it wasn't working, but it can't not work. It can't not work. But the problem was that it was you know, it was missing a loop, right? I'm going to come back to that in a second. So I said, well, I kind of think that they need PBS for adults, you know. And somebody said, well, there is something like that. It's called organizational behavior management. And that's when I read Aubrey Daniels' book, Bringing Out the Best in People. I'm like, all right, this kind of
That's a
like
great book. Yeah.